It was only supposed to be a temporary stay. My friend Jack was in the middle of renovating his old family home, and with him out of town, he needed someone to house sit and keep an eye on things. Sure, I told him, eager for a break from my apartment and thinking a big, empty house sounded peaceful. The place was massive, the kind of house that breathed history through its creaking walls and groaning floorboards. Jack's great-grandparents had built it, he said, and though most of the rooms were cleared out, you could tell it had once been a beautiful home. The first few days were fine. A bit lonely, maybe, but fine. But on the third night, I started hearing it. Footsteps, slow and heavy, coming from the second floor. I brushed it off as the house settling, or maybe an animal that had snuck in. But when I went upstairs to check, the footsteps stopped. I tried to sleep, but every time I closed my eyes, I'd hear it again. The unmistakable rhythmic sound of someone pacing back and forth in the hallway outside my door. I lay frozen, heart pounding, listening until the footsteps faded away around dawn. The next day, I decided to explore the house, hoping I could put my nerves to rest. I started upstairs where the footsteps had been. The hallway was lined with faded wallpaper and old family photos, their eyes watching me as I moved through. At the end of the hall was a door I hadn't noticed before. It was shut tight and had no handle. When I leaned in, pressing my ear to it, I could have sworn I heard faint breathing on the other side. I tried to push it open, but it didn't budge. Something about it unsettled me, like the air around it was colder than the rest of the house. I backed away, telling myself I was imagining things. That night, the footsteps returned, louder than before. They were right outside my room, almost as if someone or something was waiting. Summoning my courage, I opened the door, shining my flashlight into the hall. No one was there, but the footsteps hadn't stopped. They sounded like they were moving toward that door at the end of the hall, as if something was being drawn back to it. I followed the sound, flashlight trembling in my grip, until I stood in front of the door again. This time, I could hear more than just breathing. There was a low whisper, words I couldn't understand, a language I'd never heard. And then I heard my name, faint but unmistakable. "Who's there?" I stammered, not expecting an answer. The whispering stopped, replaced by a chilling silence. But as I turned to leave, the door creaked open just a crack, releasing a waft of cold, stale air. I stared at the darkness beyond it, and then, as if compelled, I stepped inside. The room was pitch black, and my flashlight barely pierced the darkness. The air felt heavy, thick with an invisible presence. And then I saw it. A figure standing in the far corner, its shape barely visible. It was dressed in an old-fashioned suit, a man who looked like he'd been plucked from another century, his face shadowed. He took a step forward, and as the light hit his face, I realized with horror that he had no eyes. Just dark, empty sockets. His mouth twisted into a wide, unnatural grin, stretching farther than it should. I tried to scream, but no sound came out. His grin grew wider as he stepped closer, reaching out a hand that was gnarled and thin, like it had been decaying for years. I backed out of the room, slamming the door shut behind me, heart racing as I stumbled back to my room. I didn't sleep the rest of the night. Every so often, I'd hear that same whisper again, saying my name, calling to me from behind the door. The following morning, I packed my things, ready to leave, but something strange caught my eye. I checked the hallway to find that the door was gone. Not closed, not shut tight, just gone. In its place was a blank wall, as if it had never been there at all. I called Jack, voice trembling, demanding he tell me about the room. After a long silence, he finally said, "I think you mean his room. They say he never left, that the house holds him here." I didn't stay to hear more. I left that house and never looked back, but sometimes, late at night, when everything is quiet, I still hear him pacing. And if I listen closely enough, I hear him whispering my name.